Welcome back. You are listening to episode number 51 of the Cream City Club podcast. I'm Spencer Michaelis, and I'm here as always with Gunnar Amalunk. Gunnar, I'm not even going to ask you how we're doing. We're just going to get right into this. Um, Before we do, I guess I shouldn't have said we're going to get right into this. We're basically going to get right into this. But first, if you're listening and you haven't yet subscribed, please take a moment to do so on whatever platform you are on and rate us 5 stars. Follow us on Twitter at the Cream City Pod to stay up to date on these episode releases. And today is going to be us complaining about the Bucks first round selection. So, Gunner, how about we break it down what we're going to go through here, and then we'll it's going to be a lot of ranting, I think, tonight. But start us off.
Yeah, a lot of rants, not organized at all, so we apologize. We did have a little bit of organization here at the last second, but we'll touch on all these things probably in our rants. But to start it out, we'll probably talk about our expectations coming into the night and what we thought maybe would happen, and then who we wanted to actually pick as the pick got closer and more realistic as names start to fall off the board, who we thought maybe we would pick as the pick got closer. And then we'll talk about the Bucks selecting AJ Johnson with the 23rd pick. And then our expectations for maybe the second round pick as the first round's wrapping up here as we record. So we'll maybe know the names that are available at the end of this podcast, maybe depending on how long this goes. So yeah, I guess we can start there, Spencer. I guess before we get our rants going, what did you maybe expect coming into the night? I know there's rumors of trades maybe happening, or if you want to talk about a specific player that you had in mind, obviously we probably know the name that you wanted, but what did you think the Bucks would do tonight here on day one of the draft?
Yeah, honestly, I had no idea what they were going to do, but I had a lot of things that I was hoping they would do. Many of them included trading Bobby Portis, which did not happen today, or Pat Connaughton, and or both in separate trades, whatever. I don't care. I would have loved to have seen one of them moved using the draft capital that we have, though, is tough. I get it. It would be kind of a tough time to move some capital when you don't have much in general and you don't have many ways to add young talent to the team. So I wasn't fully expecting them to trade out of 23, but I did think it was a decent possibility. Um, yeah, in terms of names that I wanted, I think we all know Ware was probably at the top of my list. One of my bigger fears was Kyle Filipowski being the pick, and well, that turned out not to be the pick, and I'm now sort of regretting not being okay with that. Um, I don't know. There were some names that started falling, and I'll let you talk about this part first, but there were some names that started falling that were pretty interesting. None of them ended up making it to the Bucks, but they fell a lot further than I expected, and I don't know. Coming in, I was honestly just scared to see what the Bucks would do, and it seems as though my fears have been warranted. So, Gunnar, what were you thinking coming into tonight? And yeah, I know you had some different names than I did for guys you were interested in. So,
Yeah, I guess first, like you said, I didn't know what we're going to do today, so it was probably the most going into a Bucks draft where I really had no feel whatsoever on. I think we both knew that we'd probably take a big, depending on the names that were there. Now we know what happened was a lot of the names that we wanted ended up falling off the board before we got them, so that's probably what made them change course. But it really felt like they're going to get a big man, which was a huge need for us, obviously, and maybe we still can in the second round somehow. But the names are a lot different now in the second round than they were the names that were in the first round that we wanted. Um, I was thinking back, I sent you a clip to John Horst was on the news, and it wasn't like super news breaking what he said, but he was working with Doc Rivers on the draft and trade discussions with him, and it seemed like that intel gave me that we weren't going to make a trade on draft night because he almost alluded to a trade happening after the draft. And so I just coming into tonight, I kind of figured we are gonna take a guy at 23, I guess is maybe the best way to put it. And then a couple trades happened today that I'm like, well, maybe not, because now it seems like the value is pretty high for these picks all of a sudden. I know Denny Avia got traded. And that's pick 14 or whatever too. So I just thought maybe Bobby Portis then is available, but that didn't happen. And then yeah, maybe my last prediction that I made at the very end was where I went back to square one and did my Yves Messi pick that I had in the podcast because I thought that was a big man that would be available, and he went at like 21 or whatever. So. And then, like you mentioned, Ware went at 15, and then we know what happened with the Bucks pick. So I guess at this point, if we just want to jump into maybe if we can zero in, if you can take yourself back before we got the pick, who did you want when that pick 23 came up? I know we both made an agreement that we're gonna watch the draft live and put our phones down because Woj and Shams have a great way of just spoiling the draft every year now, and we just like, you know what, we're gonna watch this one live and put our phones down. So, who did you want to see come on the ticker for the Bucks when the pick got announced?
Well, unfortunately, the Nuggets, I think, came in and I think the Bucks had it. I think there's a pretty good chance the Bucks were looking at Duran Holmes as their pick in that spot, and the Nuggets knew it, and they knew the Bucks wanted a big man, and they ended up jumping in front. Would have loved that pick. Would have been thrilled with that pick. Unfortunately, they didn't have the chance to do it. Terrence Shannon Jr. was probably the guy I wanted the most that was left. Isaiah Collier, I know that was your guy. I would have been totally fine with Collier. I I didn't love a lot of the names, so I will say that like there were a decent amount of names that I probably wouldn't have been thrilled with that were expected to go in this area, and that is kind of part of drafting in the 20s of a not great draft in general. A lot of the guys who were ranked maybe a little bit lower by a lot of the big boards and a lot of that stuff ended up going higher, and those were a lot of the guys that I actually liked. A lot of the people higher on the big boards kind of fell, and I think for a reason I would agree with most of what the what the league has done. Um, yeah, I a lot of them went just before us with Holmes and with who did the Cavs take? Tyson out of Cal. Lots of like guys that I would have been just totally fine with. I wouldn't have been thrilled. I don't think there were very many people left that would have got me extremely excited at that pick, but I did not expect them to go with who they went with. But Gunnar, who were I know Collier was probably top of your list, but were you looking at some other guys too and some other people you would have been fine with at that selection?
Yeah, I think once the big man, to me, the big man just fell off the table at that point. So, Collier felt like the biggest talent to bet on because the other names I didn't super love. I like you mentioned Terrence. I liked him. He felt like a safe, good pick. Like there's probably a little bit of ceiling there for us to actually expand on, and could probably play right away too. At least you could try it. But yeah, Collier felt like a guy who most likely can't play right away, but the talent is like really high. So it's like, okay, I can see us betting on that. And I mentioned on a previous episode how the Bucks just need to start getting talent on the team and betting on that instead of taking the safe pick or the project to maybe if the Bucks are bad and this is 2013, it makes sense. Like when you take a project like Giannis and that works out. And I'm not saying AJ is going to be close. Maybe he is going to be honest. Who knows? It's I don't want to retract this statement one day, but it just seems like a very, very weird pick right now to bet on a super raw guy who I like, but seems like there is really no way he was going to go in the first round. Um, and I think you mentioned too how the Athletic had him going to us at the 23rd pick, which was weird because again, he wasn't supposed to go in the first round. And you're like, okay, that's weird. I like this guy, but why is that happening now? And um, like you said, I think they wanted Holmes right before our pick, and the Nuggets, I know, promised him. So um, probably threw us off our game a little bit. But I think at the end of it, if we weren't going to get Collier, I would have probably just preferred us trading the pick, honestly, or trading back and getting some assets. Because there are still some guys in the second round that I like. And we'll talk about that at the end, I guess. But like Kevin McCullough was one guy that I like. He's still going to be there most likely. And probably a couple others I can't even think right now. But um, just the same amount of talent, it was still going to be there, I guess is the best way to put it. And for a team who doesn't have draft as assets as much as we do, maybe we could have got some future seconds and moved back or something. I don't know what the trade could have been, but um, I did want to rip John Horst here a little bit if I will get the opportunity to do so. I just don't understand. I don't know if it's him. I don't know if it's our like staff who develops our development staff, whatever, whoever does the scouting. Just awful drafting at this point. And I don't know. It's really disappointing, I guess, knowing how important this offseason is, and it doesn't mean it's over. Obviously, a lot of things can happen. We haven't even seen one trade happen yet, but the draft was going to be a big asset, this 23rd pick, how we're going to use it. Are we going to attach it to somebody else to trade? Most likely, like I said, we probably wanted a big man, and that was maybe the easiest way to get a big man who was athletic and um, could help you in a trade if you're going to trade Brooke or Bobby. And you already got your athletic big man then at 23 and then whatever. But it's just super, super disappointing. I just don't know how he's going to be able to explain this pick at all. Um, to him make it make any sense for this team and this roster. It just seems like a complete waste of an asset right now. When time is 100% ticking on this team. Uh, and yeah, that's all I got right now. I'm just really disappointed in him. I don't know how else to put it. And like I said, maybe it's not on all of him. I just don't think he deserves to get the slack cut for him anymore. Especially, as you know, I'm super disappointed in how the last year went and the trade deadline. And like I said, trades can still happen. It's not like it's all over because we made maybe a bad pick here. But I just don't know. I don't know how he's going to explain this one, I guess is maybe the best way to put it. I just don't know how it's going to make sense. But yeah, I guess what did you think of him?
I can tell you how he's probably going to explain it is to be like, we had him as a top 10 guy on our board, which is what every GM says when they draft somebody and they get him in that spot. And like, I do think so. Draft wise, I know Milton Newton gets a lot of the credit towards what goes into that. He's the assistant GM. I tweeted it. It just feels like they need to overhaul that entire department. It's been a mess. Like you said, that the Ajax pick was good. I like that pick in the moment. That's pretty much the only pick I've liked in the moment since Dante, honestly, because that was, and even that I was a little bit iffy on. He was my, if Gunner probably remembers, because I texted him about Dante very early on in the draft process and was like, this is who I want. And then by the time draft day had come around, I was like, yeah, I don't know. He's kind of concerning me. I think I probably did a little bit of like over watching and over nitpicking on him, but pretty much no pick at any other time in John Horst's tenure have I been excited about other than Ajax. And that's not good. And it would be one thing if he was proving me wrong and all these guys were going out and performing and doing something for the team. Um, but that's not happening. It's not happening at all. You're not getting performance out of anybody. And I will say, like I should say, honestly, last year's draft in general, I was like Livingston was a nice pick at the last pick of the draft. His second round selections have actually mostly been pretty good.
I was
And
gonna say that there's
um,
something to us, maybe the second round safer or something, but with the
it's
pressure on in the first round, it's very clear that he can just not execute in that first
no,
round.
no. And at least I guess this year he didn't just pick whatever player did well in the tournament. But I, I don't know, man. Like I hated the Marjan pick in the moment. I was able to talk myself into it, and I feel like I should have just stuck to my guns because I don't enjoy Marjan. I don't think that was a good pick. I just I don't know, man. So I guess we'll give a little bit of an inside look here. I was I saw Johnson get mocked to the Bucks at 33, like I don't know, probably a week ago, and sent Gunner a text and was watching some of the video and like I thought he was interesting. And then the first thing I find when I look him up is that he's 167 pounds, which is, I mean, that is, you cannot play in the NBA at that weight. I know I saw somebody tweet that Ja Morant was 170 pounds when he got drafted, and this is not Ja Morant. Like, Ja Morant had a little bit of a different athletic ability than anybody really at that size. Um, and Johnson's athletic. Like, he had some nice dunks, some act in the combine games, he had a pretty big poster. He barely played in Australia because he was so skinny and so undersized compared to what he was going against. I just don't see how he helps in the next 2 years, like minimum. And that you can't do that. Like Connor touched on, this is the window. This is the window. Now, I understand that you want to create a second one with Giannis, but let's be real. Giannis will be potentially like 33, 34 when AJ Johnson becomes a potential player in the NBA. Like, as much as I love Giannis, there's a chance he's not that dude at that age. With his athleticism and what he relies on for his game, he'll probably be very good into his mid 30s. But the Giannis we've seen for the last 6 years, I don't know if he'll be that guy at that point. And I don't know if you're really extending a window or if you're just putting yourself into mediocrity with guys who have a longer term ceiling. Like, you needed to get somebody who could impact the team right away. And I don't get it. My guess is they were pretty confident he was not going to be there in the second, and they loved him. And maybe they'll be proven correct. This kind of does remind me a little bit of like the Anthony Simons pick for Portland when everybody did not love that pick in the moment because Portland was trying to compete with Dame and they had CJ. and they were trying to go win in that moment, and then they drafted Anthony Simons. But that one has worked out longer term, but it didn't help Dame win anything, and Dame didn't even stay at the end of it. Like there was, it didn't work out how they had hoped. Now it gave them a decent player who is stuck around, obviously, and he's uh he's doing pretty well. I think he's probably not as good as some people think he is, but I would say they probably feel fine about that pick in the end, but I don't know, man. It doesn't help this window. It's it's a guy that you're banking on a lot of development from an organization that has not developed players very well. Like, yes, maybe Doc's staff and all of his, and we talked about the super staff type thing that he's forming. And, maybe this coaching staff is a lot better at developing guys than what we've had. That wasn't really known as one of Bud's like main things. He was a lot better with vets and helping guys figure out their careers a little bit later on, but I don't know. I don't want to, and I should make it clear, like I don't have anything against AJ Johnson, and I hope people aren't going to be like rude to AJ Johnson. He got picked at the 23rd pick by the Bucks. He did nothing wrong. This is not his fault in the slightest. It's like when it's a terrible comparison, but when Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love got picked and everyone was screaming at them like they did something, like they didn't do anything. They got drafted by a team, and AJ Johnson got drafted by the Bucks, and I hope he's really good, and I hope he's able to add weight quickly, and maybe he can help a little bit earlier than we're expecting. But on the surface, I just don't see how this is a logical selection or how it makes really any sense for what the Bucks needed in this moment. And it feels like a very good chance of being a complete waste of a pick. But that's my rant on Johnson, Gunner. I guess what are you thinking on it? I probably covered a lot of what you were going to say, I would imagine, but what are your thoughts overall with the pick and with him? And I guess after you talk, we'll maybe talk about like what's the best case scenario here with him.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he could end up being pretty solid maybe one day. Like it's not to say he's going to be bad. It's not to say he's a bad player either. Like you can look, I just watched while you were talking, I saw people were posting his like NBA Combine, whatever game they play a couple times. I've seen it already a couple times. Like you said, you sent me some stuff earlier, so I looked him up. But there is some exciting talent there for sure. And I was excited for him in the second round because that was about what he was valued at. Um, I just I just really do not understand it whatsoever. I just don't get it. Um, and it's just so hard to, and I know we're getting rumors too about like the Brooke Lopez trade maybe this week or something, and that Bobby Portis says it just feels like both of those, even in two different ways, those are tough trades to make for two different reasons. And it's just felt like this pick was such like a really big value pick for us. However, whatever way we took it, it was going to be such a big value. Like if we got a center, like I talked about, or we got a guy who could play right now. Um, and I mean, there's probably maybe a small chance that we could have traded up and got somebody. I don't know what the opportunity was for that. I didn't actually look fully at the Ron Holmes pick or who they traded. I think uh they traded a late second and their 28th pick, and then like maybe two future seconds.
Yep.
I don't think we would have had that in our bag. Maybe we have a better second round pick right now.
Yeah.
Um, and I wonder if maybe I'm sure we weighed that option because we wanted him badly, but um, I just don't know how you pivot from that to this too when you think about that even more, like a guy who could help right away, and then you pivot to like, all right, we're just completely unorganized here. We're just gonna get the talent guy. Like, okay, what was the point of this? Um, and like we just can't harp enough on like the window here, like these 2 years. You don't get the 2 years here back. If Dame's 28, if Giannis is 26, like that, it makes sense. Then I can believe it. But like you said, this team's getting older and older. Um, it just doesn't fit the core, I guess. And we're already talking about how this team's old, but I've seen a couple times and I've mentioned it how we kind of sneaky have like these we're going to have if we take the second round pick too. We'll talk about what we do with that, but we might even have like five or six young guys in this roster, which feels like weirdly almost too much. And I know we need to get younger and get guys, but it like half your roster is young guys, and now half of those guys are guys who can't even play on the team right now. So I don't understand what we're wasting these roster spots on too. Like that's not how you get value, I guess. Like that's why I said I would have just rather traded back and got more picks then for the future. Maybe get two future second round picks. I don't know. Um, Trade back more or whatever, get a future second round pick, get one late in the first round right now. I don't know. But I just think this is another case of terrible asset management from John Horst. And like I said, maybe it's not all him. Maybe the draft unfolded terribly, but it always seems to unfold terribly for us too. Um, so I don't know if that's a coincidence or whatever the case may be. If it just always feels like that, and there are names that I guess we did avoid, like the Kyle Flipowski or the Ryan Dunn, who that pick honestly makes more sense than this pick. Like I could see like a guy who plays defense, horrible on offense. I would have wanted to throw up probably watching him actually try to possess the ball, but makes sense. Like I can envision why like what the idea is there. Um and we just went away from that. And again, I just don't know how you can explain it. Like you said, he's going to say that we had him on the board. Clearly we did, like you said, because it was rumored that he was going to come here. So there was whispers that he was going to the Bucks somehow. But yeah, I mean, I don't know who. I saw Collier went 29 on my phone while you were talking. I don't know who went 30th, but
Hasn't
um,
happened yet, but
yeah. So we
Gibson
might
Jr. and
have,
Dunn came off the board.
yeah.
Yeah. It's
Um,
well, the Bucks are going to have a chance to draft Filipowski at 33 probably. So what a dream scenario that would be. Um all right. I think we got to look at it at least somewhat positively here. Let's try to do something a little positive here. So the reason I sent the video to Gunner in the first place was because I thought Johnson was an interesting player. Um, he's got a 6'8" wingspan, a little bit longer than 6'8" wingspan. I think he moves well laterally and he's got pretty good burst. He definitely can jump. Like I said, I mean, he had a couple posters in the combine games. I think his jumper looks pretty decent. It's pretty quick. But I guess the hard part is we just don't really know a lot about how he's going to hold up in some ways. And I don't know if he ended up working out for the Bucks. I don't think he was on our list originally. I That doesn't mean he didn't. That's just how many public names we heard. So there's a good chance he did. And especially if they seemingly really wanted him, and apparently it wasn't a huge secret, at least to the people at the Athletic, because they were all over it for the last couple weeks with the Bucks being pretty high on him. I guess I don't know. I'm trying to be positive, and then I keep wanting to spin it back into a negative thing. But I do think there is a legitimate ceiling. Like that's the main takeaway is that I do think there is a potential good player in there. It's just always going to come back to whether that potential is realized at all, and even if it is it within a window that actually helps the Bucks? And I'm not sure I could see that happening really, but I guess what I'm going to say is that back to what I talked about, the new staff gives me a little hope. I do know that Darvin was a guy that worked with a lot of the young guys, and people have always enjoyed him being around young guys. I don't know if that's actually helped a lot or if they just like Darvin. um, I know they brought in a couple of guys, both the Jason Love from the Sixers and I can't remember the Cavs guy, but the other pretty high-ranking Cavs official were both known for being pretty decent with player development. And I know that Doc's developed a decent amount of young players despite not playing them that much. I guess I could take it that way too. Doc might not have played whoever we picked here very much anyway, regardless of if they were actually ready or not. So I guess in that case, you could argue, well, he wasn't going to play much anyway, so why not take the guy with the higher upside and see if he can work things out and eventually become a player? But I don't know. That definitely feels like coping to me. So, yeah, Gunnar, you got any positives beyond what I said there?
Nope. I was gonna say one actually last negative is um because again I want to harp on I don't want us to be wrong that he's going to be good. Like he could potentially be good. Like I'm not saying he's going to be bad, but I know I mentioned this too during midway through the season. You might have mentioned it too, and we just watched like Derek Lively play really good in the playoffs and then in the finals. That's a very, very rare case where a 19, 20-year-old actually helps you in a playoff series. So you're almost guaranteeing this guy is not going to help you, which again, not always the case, but you mentioned his body frame and everything else. Like he's just not going to be ready the next 2 years. And if he is, we've got him on the Giannis program, and maybe Giannis can give him the whatever special Giannis juice that he was drinking for a couple of years there to get him looking like Hulk. But I just don't see it happening. I know I really this whole time, ever since the pick, I'm just trying to make sense of it, and I don't. But I guess we can slide now to the second round picks here because we got a little bit of an idea now who is going to be available and maybe what we might do with the pick. Um, I mean, some of the names that I threw out there are still out there, and I looked at one of these rankings too. I just saw it. AJ Johnson was ranked 46 on this list that I was looking at, and we got him at half that number. Uh, I don't get it. But we have another name that I know has been hot around Bucks fans, Kevin McCullough Jr., who was a top like lottery pick almost going into this season. And I'm also assuming he didn't get picked here. I'm pretty positive he didn't get picked.
Who?
Kevin McCullough Jr. out of Kansas.
No, yeah,
Did
he
he?
has not been picked.
Okay. Yeah, he's been a hot name amongst Bucks fans and just people in general because um he was a top supposed to be a top pick, looked pretty good. And then there's some rumors that people were acting like he was quitting on his team or something because he was getting ready for the draft. I'm not really sure. I don't watch college basketball. I was just hearing the murmurs, but um the other one, the Harrison Ingram, who I brought up from North Carolina, I don't believe he got picked. That would be fun. Jamal Sheed, who I brought up again, should still be there. Um, Guard, perimeter defender, as we all talked about last episode. But um, I feel like, you know, this is going to get to where we're at the unfamiliar territory of the overnight, what happens overnight now, because again, the draft happens the next day. Um, it seems like now maybe this one gets traded, and maybe that's when a trade happens. We pair this pick up with somebody on our team, however that looks. I'm not holding hope out for that, but like I said, with the too many young guys, and you're just signing somebody up for the roster that Doc Rivers is not going to play. It just doesn't make sense to me. So maybe that's how we get rid of one of these picks. Maybe that's how Bobby goes. Maybe that's how Pat goes, and we shave salary. I don't know, but do you have any names that you like that are left in the list? And maybe what do you think we'll do with the pick? Do you think we'll actually pick a player, or do you think we'll trade it?
I think we'll make a pick. You took most of the names I would be interested in. I do think the more I think about it, like I could live with Filipowski in the second round, but I would in the end just be flipping them in my head, and then I would still have drafted Filipowski in the first round, which won't really make me happy anyway. So, um, I don't know. It's it's gonna be an interesting one. I don't know. Honestly, at this point, I would almost say rather they just take another swing on talent if they're going to just decide that that's their thing here.
Hmm.
I would almost rather they do that. I don't want Tyler Kolek. I do not want him. I could live with Johnny Furphy in the second round, I guess. Oh, Cameron Christie, but he's also very, very skinny. And yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. I've seen Adam Bona from UCLA mock to us. If you have ever watched a highlight tape and thought, boy, that guy plays a lot like Thanasis, he's the guy for you. Now, I that's somewhat joking because I do think he's a better player than Thanasis, but in terms of a highlight tape, you could not be much more comparable to Thanasis than what Bona is. I wouldn't hate the pick, but yeah, I certainly would not be my favorite. Um, I can never remember how it's said, but Pele Larson from
Hmm.
Arizona. Now he could shoot at the NBA level like immediately. I think he's a better ball handler and distributor and more talented offensively than just shooting wise. But he hit 43% on threes. But I don't know. Kashad Johnson would be fine from Arizona. That would be a plug and play defensive player that you could put in right away. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe just take Bronny James and try and sign LeBron. I don't know. Bet
Honestly, at
minimum
this
to
point, yeah.
LeBron.
Then we had
Um,
a strategy. Then we could pair him up with AJ and say, all right, well, that's our future for in 4 years. And then we get LeBron for right now.
yeah, yeah, why not? No, we'll see where they go. I mean, there are players that are interesting on the board,
Hmm.
and that's again, if they take someone I like at 33, I can just flip it in my head and probably make myself feel better and just say, all right,
Hmm.
Johnson was the 33rd pick, and because I was fine with him at 30, I didn't love it, but I was okay with him at 33 when I first saw it on the mock draft. Um, but yeah, I don't know. This was I did not expect this. And even though the Athletic tried to prime me for it and warn me about it, I still did not think they would actually do this. Um, there's talent, and he could be a good player. And again, I don't want this to be something where people think that we're ripping on him or that Bucks fans should be upset with
Yeah.
him for any
It's a
reason.
situation.
It's the situation. So I think that probably wraps it up for us. Do you have anything else before we move on to our special edition version of Random Bucks, Gunner?
No, I don't. We are gonna have an update here. This is live after the first round, so then we'll give an update after the second round and combine these two episodes. So if it doesn't sound or it sounds a little clunky, that's why it's gonna we'll almost jump in time here after this next part.
Yeah. Yep, it will be it's going to get cut in a few minutes and then we will add one about the second round or whatever happens tomorrow after that. So, why don't we kick off our Random Bucks draft busts? That's what we're going with on this one. And again, that's not to say he's going to be a bust. I don't even think you can say a 23rd pick is a bust really, but um
Uh,
we're gonna kick it off. So Gunnar, who do you got for this one?
Same thing. He's not really a draft bust. I think he was a second round pick. I just thought of like a skinny shooter that we drafted with talent, and it was raw. And Duran Lamb came to mind here. He went to Kentucky, I believe. Um, Another guy where you watch his mixtapes, you watch his highlights, you're like, man, this guy could cook. He was a problem in college, and um, just overall, this looks like he's a baller. Like you could pick up a basketball and just look like he's got handles and um, like just a really good natural basketball player and did not do much with us. He actually played, I remember, a decent amount that rookie year, which it was a lot more shocking than I thought he would. And then I want to say, I know we traded him to the Magic, which did we pair him with like Tobias Harris in that
I
trade? Was
think
that,
so. I
yeah,
believe so.
because I remember he played a little bit on the Magic. So I guess we got some value out of that of the JJ Redick, and then who's now the Lakers head coach, who got a pretty decent pick with his luck. So must be nice.
Yeah, how about that? Must be nice. I just switched mine. I was going to go with Joe Alexander, but when you talked about skinny shooting,
Yeah, I thought about
not
this guy.
not great. I decided to go with Rashad Vaughn on this one, and honestly, in a lot of ways, I think Johnson's a better athlete, but I can see some comps to Rashad Vaughn here. It's a lanky, little taller guard who has some questions with the shot. Vaughn, I don't know what happened to his shot in the NBA. He just completely lost it. But hopefully Johnson can be a little bit better than that. But that is who. As soon as you said that, I was like, all right, I know who I need to talk about now, and that's Rashad Vaughn. And that was an awful pick. I mean, that dude couldn't even play at any point. He just never was
Nope.
even close to an NBA rotation player. So yeah, that's how we're gonna wrap up the first part of this. And like I said, I'm gonna cut it in like 3 to 4 seconds here, and then you will hear our talk about the second round after that. All right, we're back. We're here for part two. We're going to talk about round two now. So, Gunner, the Brewers. I've talked a lot of Brewers tonight. If anybody follows me on any other podcast I'm on, this is my third of the night. So if I'm a little loopy, well, you know what? That's my excuse. I apologize. But the Bucks ended up making their 33rd selection in the draft in the second round, third pick overall in the second round. And I know when we left, we obviously weren't sure they might trade it. We weren't really sure what direction they were going to take it, but they did end up using the pick, and they used it on another 19-year-old. This one of the G League Ignite, home of, or future, past home of Marjan Beauchamp, which, that's worked out great for us going to the G League Ignite. But this time they went with a tall lefty. I would call him more of a big wing in my mind, but I think they're going to play him as a four. Tyler Smith. And well, give me your opening thoughts. What did you think about the pick, and what do you think of Smith? And I'm guessing we're not in as bad a mood on this pick as we were yesterday, but where did you land on this one?
No, not at all. I'm definitely a little bit more excited about this guy. Mostly because if you compare the first round versus the second round, this one felt more like a lottery type of pick you'd take in the
Right.
second round. But he was on our radar for sure. I'm not sure. I don't think I mentioned him in the first part, or I know we might have touched on him at one point in one of the episodes, but
We have for sure,
um,
but yeah, I don't know if it was this
yeah.
one or not.
But yeah, I'm decently excited about it. It seems like his one skill that you could say is elite. I don't know if it is an elite skill, but it's his one skill that stands out is the fact that he can shoot pretty well,
Yep.
being the size that he is. And technically, I guess he is a mobile big man, but I know when you say that, it sounds like he's like this big defensive, like gonna be everywhere, like a monster on defense. It's not really that, or even on offense, really. But he does do little things that you like, and he is mobile, athletic. I was trying to come up with maybe like a comp for him, just looking at his highlights, and obviously I'm not watching G League Ignite games, so I'm not super familiar with him. But it seems like offensively my comp for him was maybe like a PJ Washington almost, with his size, and he doesn't shoot great, but you definitely feel like it's a threat out there for three. Probably would have games where he can score 20 plus, but mostly he's gonna sit down in a low number of like the double digits. But I like that defensively. You hear, I know Nathan Marzian, to shout him out, he posted a clip of maybe or a section of a paragraph of somebody talking about his defense for maybe a couple months ago, and they were saying that he's maybe one of the worst guys in the draft defensively, which if you know what we needed going into this draft, it's not a great pick in that sense. But I think knowing that he is going to be a project and in the second round, as we mentioned, I think there's tools there to be good at defense. Hypothetically, I think he is like 6'9" without shoes or
Yep.
6'11" with shoes. I'm not sure how that works. I'm always get confused with that, but I think that's how it works.
Well, yeah.
Um,
Shoes add height.
yeah, I know, but I just you hear like he's 6'9", but then you hear he's 6'11" sometimes, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's what the difference is. But um, I I know the scary thing here is like what he is. So is he going to be like a three that's a little bit bigger, or is he going to be a four that's mobile? Is he going to be a five, and then you're probably in trouble if he's a five at this point for sure. But another guy who I don't see working out right away. He's going to be a project again, like we said, but has more of a chance maybe to play because of the guys that we have in the roster. Like, we all know what could happen with their big men, but um, hypothetically, you might be able to see him in like a small ball lineup. We talk about that a lot with Giannis at five. Um, and if he is doing really good, and Giannis could cover you at five for at least stretches, and he could be the small ball four, in that sense. So I think it could work out. Like we said too, I feel better about this pick. And if we just blindly said, and you didn't tell me our first round pick, and we said we got Tyler Smith in the second round, I'd be like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I like that
Hmm.
pick. But as you mentioned in the first part, it doesn't make me feel better about the first round pick at all. Not the player, again, the situation of who we picked and why we picked them. Um, it just doesn't really feel like I can flip those guys like you're talking about too, where it's like, oh, I could flip these guys and it makes sense or a little bit of that. Um, and Kyle Flipowski went right before us too, so maybe he was on our radar potentially. I don't know, but I did hear our assistant GM too talk about. I guess it'd be a post game draft interview about Tyler Smith, and he was saying that they obviously got a bunch of calls for trades and whatnot, and he said that if their guy was going to be there when they were picking, that they were going to pick him, which made me feel a little bit better that they have a plan. Obviously, they always have a plan. It just felt like, all right, maybe like the first round felt maybe like a little bit of a scramble with not having big men available there that you wanted. So, knowing that they got the guy that they wanted, and maybe fits their system, whatever that is, they don't have a great system for young guys, but hopefully they do now. Um, Made me feel a little bit better because again, a lot of these trades and I'm seeing too, it feels like, man, we should have maybe just traded out of one of these picks to get some second rounders. It happened again today where someone got three second rounders, I think it was, right? Like three picks after our 33rd pick.
Next
Um,
pick.
yeah,
Blazers
and
got 3 for 34.
yeah, and it's just like knowing our situation and what we have to trade, and we'll talk about it maybe at the end of this one or definitely in the next couple of weeks, but very limited asset wise. So um, right now, if I'm looking at the players I'm excited about, honestly, maybe both of these guys, just if I ignore everything else and I just like the projects that we've got here, it is exciting when you think about it in that sense, if you just eliminate the situation. But how do you feel about the pick and maybe what we decided to do?
Yeah, I remember hearing some rumors of Smith at 23 at one point, and I wasn't thrilled with the idea of it then, and it was kind of for the same reasons as Johnson. It felt like you could maybe get somebody who actually might be able to help at 23 right away, and then 33 could be your big swing. And I know that's how Horst described both of these picks are big swings, and they are. And that is the thing. And for the people who just listened to the first part of this and are still listening to the second part, I'm probably going to almost backtrack a little bit on what I said, but I get the logic in taking these swings because you do have an opportunity here with rare draft picks to actually add somebody who, in the long run, could actually be a player that you want to have on your team and can be an actual impact player. And you're taking two swings on guys who have that type of ceiling with very low floors and probably in both cases an inability to really impact the game much whatsoever right away. And that's where I think the disconnect is with a lot of people and where I was immediately frustrated and still don't love, but I get it. I get the logic behind it because you do pick up two high ceiling guys. It's just two 19-year-olds is not at all what I expected coming into this draft. I thought maybe one, maybe one. Like even that, I thought they might go for two guys who they thought might be able to help right away. But I agree with what Gunnar said, and that's I do like both of these guys as prospects. Like I would have been if they were both, or if we only got one of them at 33, I would have been happy with that pick in either case. It all comes down to the 23 pick, and that part's just gonna sting, especially this year. If you see some of those guys who got picked after 23 impacting a good team, that's gonna be hard to watch. But I do think it is, and we didn't really, I think I might have mentioned it a little bit, but the odds of you getting a guy who actually does impact the team at 23 or later for a good team, I should say, it's slim. It doesn't happen a lot, but I do think it does happen. And the Bucks were in a position where that could really help a lot if you happen to strike gold and find somebody who could help you right away. Because of their roster situation, they would have benefited from it more than a lot of other teams who already, in a lot of cases, have like a 10-man rotation returning at that part. And they're just like, okay, well, these guys are just truly depth. No matter who we take here, they're depth. And for the Bucks, it was like, well, you could be a top 10 player if you're a decent player when we draft you here at 23. So that's going to be hard, especially if I see like Terrence Shannon Jr. doing well, because to me, he was the best blend of defense and offense that was on the board that I think could have helped a little bit. But if 3 years down the line, Tyler Smith and AJ Johnson, or even one of them, is a legitimate like starter, it's going to be hard to argue with that decision too much, especially depending on what we do the rest of the offseason. I think that is an important part of this too. This is literally like 5% of the offseason just passed by this draft happening. Like there are so many other things that can happen. It takes a chunk out of the offseason. Really, it's the first day of it for me, and I'm still giving it 5% because it takes some trades off the table. You can't trade those picks now, at least for quite a while. As they enter their rookie contracts, you can't trade those picks. So it's you've now limited your assets for the rest of the offseason, but there is at least an upside to what they did with these two picks. So I get it. In terms of Smith, because I didn't really talk about him much, but I agree with what you said. Defensively, I think that's going to be the concern. I did see some people talking about in high school, he seemed to have a decent understanding of defense, but when you're more athletic and taller than everyone, you tend to look pretty decent on defense. When he got playing against actual pro level players, that's where it showed up that he was, I mean, it was rough. It was really, really bad. But he has the physical tools. It'll probably be more of a, can you get him to buy in defensively and to learn the principles and do all of that stuff more than like an inability to defend? Because for me, a guy like Bobby, even if he is completely bought in mentally, I don't know that he actually has the ability to protect the rim or move his feet quick enough side to side. Like I could see Smith doing both of those things if he's in the right mindset and has just, I mean, you are going to develop at the NBA level. And I think defense might be a little harder to develop than offense in some cases, but you can do it. And there's a lot of athleticism. I mean, they got a lot faster and a lot more athletic here. And they didn't really do it the way I would have done it myself, but they did it. So I guess in that case, it seems like that was a clear goal of theirs. They've mentioned it for both players in their press conferences, like, he's fast. And they made it an emphasis in both press conferences, like, this guy's fast. And I will say, having heard Horst talk about Johnson, I'm not so sure he views him as a guy that's not going to play this year. And interestingly, Doc has played a couple skinnier guys in their first years, and these are guys who they ended up being pretty good. I'm not giving Johnson this type of credit, but Tyrese Maxey was very skinny coming out of Kentucky, and he played about 15 to 20 minutes a game his rookie year. SGA was pretty skinny coming out of college. both of them were more talented and they had more experience and they had played at a high level in college. So again, not comping them to him, but I do think there's some really honestly. So I saw Bucks breakdown and some other people going back and forth. I can't remember who, but looking at all of the rookies that Doc's had over the years, and honestly, I think it's a little overblown that he doesn't play rookies. I think people are exaggerating that a little bit. What it comes down to is he seems to play the ones who are actually decent players. In the end, he's normally right about who he plays. So the fact that a guy like Ajax did break into the playoff rotation at the end, I think that's a good sign for Ajax. The fact that guys like Marjan weren't playing still, probably not a great sign for him. And I think that leads me to one question I wanted to ask you. Can they carry six guys that are basically that are this young, two of which are 19, but then Marjan, Livingston, AJ Green, who's older but a young player still, and Ajax. Like, I guess some of them are a little bit older, but these are really guys who inexperienced players, I guess is maybe the way to phrase it instead of age. Can they carry all six of them? I feel like you almost have to swap one of them out at least, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't think you can. I mean, that's already half the roster, six guys like you mentioned. So, um, and we saw some trades. I'm forgetting who the player was. You're gonna remember it, but their trade happened today. Oh, Wendell Carter, not Wendell
Wendell
Carter,
Moore.
Wendell Moore Jr. and a pick got traded somewhere, and then they got a worse pick for him.
Yep.
So I was maybe anticipating that with Marjan, and maybe we slipped back from 33 and did something. Obviously, it's over now, so we can't do that. But maybe something like that for future picks, and that happens.
Yeah.
It sucks. I mean, again, we're pretty low on the guys like Marjan or Livingston. We're indifferent about, but those are probably the two guys that would have to go here. Um, and I would be okay with it. It just sucks. I mean, that's just the way of living right now with the second apron and stuff too, which I guess could tie into a question I was going to ask you too, which um, in the argument to us saying like maybe these guys can't play right away or and it's correct. We're both correct in saying this that the young guys don't play in the playoffs, the young guys don't play in the finals, so they can't help you right away, which makes these picks somewhat worth it. But also, I think my argument now, maybe going forward with these teams like us in our situation, and maybe this is a reason why we might keep all six guys. I don't know, but being in the second apron and having these teams now, it's a whole new landscape. We don't even know what it
Hmm.
looks like really. Maybe we start to see that trend change though now because you have to find a way to save money, and hitting on these picks are going to be a reason to actually hit on these picks because you can keep those guys in rotation players, and then you can keep them in a salary where it's going to benefit you for your stars and your bigger players. So I wonder if that trend starts to like flip a little bit, which maybe makes this more realistic to keep six guys because we expect AJ Green to play more, we expect Ajax to play more. Um, those would probably be pretty solid rotation players for us, you would think, hopefully.
Hmm.
Um, and then who knows if Marjan or something else cracks it, or again, AJ Johnson. We have so many AJs now, right? It's
I know.
just in general.
I know.
We're gonna need nicknames, which we already started doing it, but now it's gonna be more confusing.
Yep.
Or Tyler, whatever. So I just wonder, I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think maybe that changes now? I mean, like I said, I think we're right in that, and I know we're right. You look at the stats, these young guys don't play in the playoffs.
No.
But like I said, the good teams are going to be probably more of the expensive teams, which means you're going to have to get cheap somewhere, and that's
Yeah.
going to be hitting on these draft picks, which is also a scary thought because we don't also do great with draft picks. So if we're relying on getting guys who we can maybe sneak our 7, 8, 9 guys who we trust, but they're young and we can play them and get away with it. But what do you think with that? And then do you think someone's got to go? I don't know.
Yeah, well, don't worry. We have like no draft picks for the next 7 years, so we won't be making many of these selections anyway moving forward. But I suppose in a way you could make that type of argument as well that they're taking a swing because they won't have many swings to take in the next few years because of what they've done already with all their moves. But like you said, you could also argue then trading back and adding some picks would have been a worthwhile move as well. But I guess I see the logic in what you're saying. I think the only issue is that there's just not that many players who have actually been good. So who have been drafted that late, and at least I shouldn't say haven't been good, but haven't been good off the bat, like off the rip. They're playing well and well enough to be in a playoff rotation. Um, Even a guy like Ajax and what he contributed is pretty rare. Like even that type of thing just doesn't happen very often, and it's not even that teams are choosing not to play them because they're young. I think it's mostly just because they do genuinely have better players than them for the most part, and that happens. But I do think you make a decent point there that that might not happen as much, where they might not be able to load the back end of their roster as well. So maybe it becomes a little bit more important. I do think there's always going to be ring chasing vet minimum deals that are out there, and that makes it the good teams are going to get those types of guys, and that'll still push those rookies out of there. But I do think I could see that happening. I don't know if I'm expecting it, but I could see that happening down the line where, yeah, they need them to contribute because they aren't able to add to the roster in any other way during the offseason. But I guess that can lead us into the final thing we're going to talk about here, and really what the Bucks are planning to do. Free agency and the new league year starts on Sunday, and we know what they did in the draft. They can't really reverse course on that. So now that we know what's happened there, what do you expect to happen going into free agency? Do you see those trades of Pat or Bobby or Bobby, I should say? Brooke, do you think they're mostly going to stand pat and add vet minimums? You can talk about what you want and what you're expecting.
Yeah, first of all, I thought free agency in my head was starting like next week. It's already this Sunday, which I did not know was that fast already. So we'll get an answer by the next time we're even talking on the show here. But yeah, I mean, we already have, like we mentioned 100 times, we have 6 young guys, and then you go with our rotation guys right now. I believe we've got 6 under contract: Giannis, Dame, Chris, Brooke, Bobby, Pat. Um, that's probably all 6 I might have listed. That's probably bad math, but if I missed somebody, I'm pretty sure it's 6. So it's
That's
12
it.
right now. Then you need 14 guys, so that's 2 vet minimums. I know we went over this exact scenario. What happens if you get both your draft picks, you sign both of them, and then you're going to be left with 2 vet minimums. I think we can do that, but that's like a minimum roster. Obviously, you have to have
We're probably
14. So now
signing
you're,
three.
yeah, which means like you're cutting it barely. Um, at that point, it just feels like I expect us to get 2 vet minimums probably anyways. That's pretty much business as usual for us for the most part. You at the very least get 1 every year, and we're in a situation now we need 2, but um, maybe to make that easier, a trade would have to happen. Again, like you mentioned, reality versus what you want to happen is also 2 very, very different things. We've argued all week, the last week and a half between us of like Brooker Bobby, and what's going to happen. Like it's just so, and I know people probably get this. It's just not that simple to compare both of them.
Right.
I told you if you flip their salaries, I'm not even thinking about trading Brook Lopez right now. Like it's not even close. Like that's really what it comes down to in the situation that we're in. Um, Granted, if you flip their salaries, maybe no one wants Bobby Portis at 25 million either, or
I'm not sure
23
anyone
million.
wants him at his current
Right.
salary.
That's what I mean. It's double worse. So, um, the obvious thing for me is first try to trade Bobby Portis, try to trade Pat Connaughton. Newsflash, we've probably been trying to do that for a year. That's the problem here. I'm sure we tried doing that the last 2 days, today included and yesterday. Who knows
Yeah.
what the deal probably wasn't that sexy for us to do anything. So, maybe he's holding out to the very end and wait to see what happens. I feel like an answer has to come pretty fast too. For the most part, I was maybe hoping we would draft a young big, which we did, I guess, today, but a guy who felt like was more threatening to a rotation spot, like a Khalil Ware, because that's going to put Brooke or Bobby on the hot seat, most likely Bobby. Um, and then it feels like a trade has to happen at that point. But um, yeah, I mean, now you're not going to get an impact player. We went over all those guys for free agents. So the only way to get a guy now, you didn't get it in the draft. We probably weren't going to get it anyways. We didn't get lucky and get one. So you're going to have to probably make a trade now and get a defender that way or whatever the case may be. But, and Horst mentioned that too yesterday, how they're looking at trades and all that stuff. So I anticipate something happening, but also, like you mentioned with reality, I'm watching the trends right now, and I just feel like nobody wants Bobby Portis, and the only guy we have is Brook Lopez, and then that's you're on thin ice. Like I'm more willing to trade him than you are, but at the same time, now we didn't get our center, so
Yep.
now it even makes it 10 times harder. Like if we had Ware, go over all the names in the first round that went before us. If we had one of those guys at center, it felt easier to get off of Brook because you didn't necessarily need a center back, even though you would have still liked one. But now it feels like we need to get a guy who can replace him plus something else that helps you. So I just don't know what's going to happen. I anticipate a trade, like I said, but I don't know. I've been on 2K firing up trades, and they seem to go through that way, but they don't. I don't think that's how it works in reality here. But what
No,
do you think? I know you maybe had a name that you thought we might sign that would surprise us a little bit, or would I
I don't
wouldn't
think it
love,
would be a
but
huge surprise, but I just have like this feel like I'm almost like not in my head I'm 90% sure Eric Gordon's going to be a Buck next year. Like it
yeah,
just feels like we've been rumored to be connected to him for years. He opted out of a vet minimum deal, but it sounds like he's signing another one. It feels like that's who we're going to end up with
yeah,
as our Beasley. Like, and honestly, if he is not expected to be a big playoff player, I will take Eric Gordon in a regular season rotation. Like he's been fine. He's just too small now, and he's not as at. He used to be able to move his feet enough to play in the playoffs with his defense. He was a decent defender when he was younger because he's got kind of like that like thicker build where he can hold up decently, even though he's not a super tall guy. But he just can't move as well anymore either. So now he's just a thicker guy who can't really move his feet. And that's not a great defender in the playoffs. But shooting wise and like what he could bring to the offense in the regular season as a backup, I would gladly take Eric Gordon. It's not going to excite too many people, but I'd be fine with it. Um, that's the name that I'm almost, it just feels like a foregone conclusion to me that he's going to be a Buck. And maybe I'll be proven wrong, but everything seems to line up there. And then the other, on the trade subject, I think they're going to make a trade. I agree with you. I don't know what it's going to be. I could see so many different things happening over the course of the next week or so, including, I mean, I could easily see Brook traded. I could see some of the young guys traded for assets, like you said, not even assets, probably just in a straight salary dump for future seconds or something. Um, it's they have options left, but again, it's a lot more limited after this draft has passed now. So I don't know what they're gonna do. I just pray that someone wants Bobby Portis. That is all I want. I just want someone to take Bobby off our hands. And Pat, I would gladly see go as well. To me, I know Bobby's a better basketball player than Pat overall right now, I would say. But in terms of what they do to the Bucks, I think Bobby hurts the Bucks more than Pat does, and that's partially because he has a bigger role and more importance to the team as well. But like I would rather see Bobby go and Pat just become a waste of salary as our ninth man or something. I don't think he could hurt us nearly as bad as Bobby can in his role. So if I have to choose between the two, I still would prefer to move Bobby over Pat, even if it's like the same. If I'm getting the same return for both of them, I genuinely believe that Bobby is a net negative for the Bucks and that it would be addition by subtraction to lose him. I know people don't like that. There's plenty of people who disagree, plenty of people who actually genuinely believe all things thrown out that he is a better basketball player than Brook Lopez. To those people, I say you are dumb and I don't want to hear from you. But no, I think they make a move. I'm guessing we will be underwhelmed by the return, no matter who they trade of those three. Um, but I will be hurt the most if it's Brook and it's an underwhelming return. So I really don't want it to be that one. But I do think I mean, I think we're slightly different on how we view Brook as a player currently. But I do agree with you that in terms of like actually getting something that would help us, Brook's the one who would do that. And I'd be pretty surprised if the other two did. Maybe together they could just to get a salary that is decent, but that would have to be first. It would have to be a Brook trade to get under that second apron before you could combine Pat and Bobby into anything to get a salary spot. So I expect a trade. I think we'll get some. I would imagine the vet minimums we sign will be decent players because they get to play with Dame and Giannis and Chris, and they get to chase a ring. And Doc might not be the most respected nationally by a lot of people, but he is relatively respected by players who seem to view him as a player's coach. And he's always had a little bit of I shouldn't say all players. There's definitely players who don't love Doc, but there's players who seem to have a lot of love for Doc as well. So that might help a little bit. And, you've got kind of an underrated thing here is you've got a bunch of assistant coaches who have probably coached a lot of these guys as head coaches too over the years, and they might have connections with some of the free agents, so that could help too. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna get my hopes up super high for these next couple of weeks, but I think there will be action. I mean, there has to be. They have to fill the roster, but beyond filling the roster, I think we'll see some stuff happen. Gunnar, what are you looking at for this other than, you see any names specifically? I threw one out there. Really, that's all I got though. I don't know. If you don't have
Yeah.
any, that's fine.
I like Eric Gordon too. It's just that's what we're left with. There's not going to be young guys who are athletic, obviously, but
Yeah.
if you told me going into this offseason, let's just say that's the only move we made, or we got two older guys again, vet minimums, and we drafted two projects, I'd be like, what? Did we like did we know what the situation was going into this? I mean, again, we know the situation of trades and stuff. We're going over all that stuff. We probably can't make the trades that we want to make, but it would just be like, wow, we got again more older guys, and then we literally got older because Malik for Eric Gordon's like a probably a 5 year swing right there. Not
Oh,
doesn't
it's
all matter
almost
like
10.
that.
It's
10,
almost
yeah.
10.
I think Eric Gordon's very like he's very old.
Yeah.
Um, and I think Frank Madden again, he posted was he in the 2008 draft, and we've
Yeah,
had
this would be
like
like our 12th first round
yeah,
pick from the
we've had,
2008
we've
draft
had
on our
half of
roster.
the draft, the first round already. So just for that reason alone, that'd be hilarious. But yeah, the other name that I saw on the Suns too for like a big man, I know he played with Dame, and he's another guy who's been
There
a
you go.
thorn in
Yeah.
our side was Drew Ebanks. Um, just a nice, he's somewhat mobile. I don't think he shoots at all, but he's just a pain and a hard worker, like defensively, rebounding probably helps too. And I remember watching Dame games with him, and he was like a pretty good screener too. So,
Hmm.
someone who could work off of him. And if a Bobby trade happens, I'm not sure he's enough to replace Brook if that Brook trade happened and it was Brook and Bobby as our bigs. So if it's Bobby gone, that would be an awesome
Yeah.
replacement for him for sure.
Yeah. No, I
Um,
like that one. I remember when he was with Portland, Dame did a freestyle on a plane about Drew. He said Drew in it, and
yeah,
Bucks
yep,
fans got all excited about it being Drew Holiday potentially. And that's in the end, that's a very funny and ironic thing to have happened because they were traded for each other. And then if we picked up Drew Eubanks on the Bucks, that would be, I mean, that's just connecting all the dots.
yeah,
Um, I'm looking at Eubanks's page right now. It's a small sample, but in 22 games with Portland in the 2021-2022 season, he shot 65% on 9.6 attempts a game and averaged 14 and a half points and 8.5 rebounds in
wow.
29 minutes. Like I said, tiny sample, but it seems like he had pretty good. I wonder if him and Dame aren't decently close. I could see that one. I could see both the
Hmm.
guys who opted out of Suns contracts signing with the Bucks, which again, somewhat funny because Bud is in Phoenix now. So all of these connections are interesting, but I that's a good call out. I could definitely see that one happening if especially if he does actually like Dame. And it looks like he shot very few threes in his career, but it's 38%. He
Yeah.
hasn't shot many, hardly at all, but it's
He's young too. I
38%.
thought he was older than what, gonna be 27 now? So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
did not know that.
I would actually this might be my favorite potential looking at him. I think this could be a good fit. This would actually
Yeah.
make a lot of sense. So now I'm
Um,
prepared to be disappointed for him signing somewhere else.
yeah,
Uh,
the one thing with him too, it seems like with both of those guys, I mean, Eric's old, so it makes sense why he would take a vet minimum again, but him like opting out of his vet minimum or his taxpayer mid-level, whatever he did, does
yeah,
he want to go down or get the same salary?
right.
Maybe he does because he likes Dame and he likes our situation. And he's got a chance at a bigger role here. That's probably what it is too. He didn't have a huge role with the Suns, I don't think. So,
Yeah, it
um,
was 15 minutes a game, which I don't know if it'd be too much bigger here, but I could see it being
yeah.
closer to 20 or something. So,
Well, we could
yeah,
lie to him if we have to, but
yeah.
uh yeah, I think the last thing we got to do, I guess, in totality is give ourselves a grade here for the draft and wrap it
Uh,
up. Um
Go ahead. You go
uh
first.
yeah, I was prepared for this one. Um I think I can't give it higher than a C, honestly. It seems like with the projects that we've got, like I can't give it higher or lower because I don't know what these guys are going to be. I've not that I'm going to backtrack on AJ after 24 hours of thinking about it. I told you it was actually getting worse in my head. I couldn't sleep because I was thinking about it. I'm like, how can we make this work? And then I woke up a little bit more optimistic. But I guess thinking about it more and listening to the interviews about him and looking more at his tapes, I like it more. Just the player and ignoring our situation. That's the best way I can come with to grips with it in my head. But um, just knowing like, okay, he's going to be ready in 3 years. Um, might have the opportunity to learn under Dame too, which we've mentioned Anthony Simons and guys like that. He's done it before and he's taken guys under his wing um, pretty easily. He's never complained about it at all. So. Um, just sucks he can't help us out right now, but seems like a guy who we could benefit from having Dame, learn from Dame, and then
Yep.
the one tool that he has, and like you mentioned with John Horst, like I mentioned, like elite tools, like what's the one thing that we can exploit this season if he does play? And like John said, it's the speed, it's the athleticism, like that is something that we don't have. So if we need a
Hmm.
game where we always mention like the Heat or something, I guess he would get bodied in that game for being 165. But if we need a game where we gotta just quick spurts of like 10 minutes, go out there, run the Pacers. We just played the Pacers and we had to run with them for 10 minutes. Less than that, just go out there, run, like cause havoc, kind of like a Ajax, and then get off the floor and gain some weight, eat some cheeseburgers or something. But um, yeah, I don't hate it. I don't love it. I'm optimistic for the future. The picks, like I said, a lot of talent there. It just sucks for our situation right now, but I feel better than I did probably in part one, I guess, because I was pretty upset and I ripped John
Yeah.
Horst, which I don't feel bad about either. I do think he deserves to get called out, but I
Yep.
feel okay right now.
Yeah. I'm going C minus, but I'm pretty much the exact same as you, where I like the picks. And by the way, I've decided we're gonna call him Ajon, Ajax, and AJ. There's all three of them. We got
Sure.
them. Ajon, Ajax, AJ. That's how I'm referring to them until the first time I call him AJ, which will be like the second time I talk about him. But that's where we're at with it. No, I'm totally agree with you. I think there's a chance that this looks pretty good at some point with these two guys. They could both suck. There's a wide range in their outcomes here. That's very, very real outcome as well for both of them. But I do get the vision in a way. I just, it's the same thing Gunnar said. I feel like you had a chance to potentially add somebody that could help, even maybe not this year, but next year too. And I'm not sure either of these guys are going to be super capable of even helping in year two, but we've seen it before. I mean, I also should note it's not impossible to add like 10 pounds in a few months of decent
Mhm.
weight. Um, but I do think some people, and I'll just, some people relate Giannis putting on all his weight to like anybody being able to do that. Giannis like didn't eat a lot of days when he was in Greece. He was literally maybe one meal a day. You could argue he was malnourished when he got to Milwaukee. Like it's pretty easy to add weight quickly when you are literally just finally getting to eat like a normal person and be able, and beyond that, you get to eat a lot more than that as an NBA player and be able to put on a lot of weight quickly that way. But he could add weight and it could work out decently. And maybe he'll be able to help earlier than we're thinking. Again, I like the talent. So C minus, I think yesterday I probably would have said a D if I was told we were going to take the Tyler Smith with the other pick and went 2 19-year-olds. So I guess it worked out okay. But we already did our random bucks, so we're just going to wrap this one up. So that's what we got on this. We will be back sometime soon, but please like and subscribe on whatever platform you're on. Remember to follow us on Twitter at the Cream City Pod, and please feel free to leave feedback for us on how we can get better. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.
Go Bucks.